Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Excited to hear and share your story. Where are you calling in from? Where's home base for you?
I'm calling in from Tampa, Florida. That's
Awesome.
where we've lived for the last almost 30 years, but a little break in Dallas. And then we also have a house up in Charlottesville, Virginia. So we spent some time up there.
Beautiful. Amazing areas, all of them. So we're going to kick off with two questions. One is, if your kids approach you, tell you they want to join the military, how do you react? What do you do?
If my kids did that, I'd be very, very excited. But both, I have a daughter and a son, and both were interested in my history, my career, but they didn't have a desire to go into the military. I think our daughter at one time asked if he could be a helicopter pilot and a chef at the same time, and I said that's not going to work. But I think they would have enjoyed it. But I also think that I'd been out of the military for about 4 years by the time they were born, so there's a little bit of a distance on it. So they didn't get the chance to move it around and see in military installations. But they certainly are very supportive.
Awesome. Yeah, great to hear it. Next question is, we see how when veterans enter the civilian workforce, there's a cultural gap that exists, and vice versa, right? Civilians understanding how to interact with veterans. How do you see us better bridging that gap moving forward?
I've thought about that a while, because you really need to have somebody help you with that bridge. You can't just do it by yourself. It's very helpful if you go into an organization that has ex-military folks in it, and you can essentially be kind of like the buddy system of, hey, I know you're going through these kind of, changes, thinking about different things. The sense of urgency is a little bit different. So you really need to have somebody that can kind of put their arm around them and say, hey, this is what's going to be going on. These are things you need to be concerned about, or these are things that we all think about, that you'll have anxiety of, do I fit in? And just, help them out. You've got to reach out to have a buddy, so to speak, to kind of help them through the process.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I totally agree. That's, it's invaluable support. And I think it's easy to understand how that's relatable, really, for anyone transitioning to anything new, but especially so for veterans really changing their world environment for sure.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, the other thing is that there's very few. I mean, anywhere between probably 3 and 4% of the people in America actually serve in the military. And so there'll be instances where you'll meet somebody that's in their 20s or 30s, and they will have never met anybody that served in the military. So they're not really sure. So you have to kind of keep your eyes out and help the vets transition, because they were civilians before they became in the military, and so they just now have a break. They're in the military now; they have a break back.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it's pretty fascinating or amazing to think about how there are people who literally never interact or come across a veteran. Absolutely agreed. All right, Mark. So we're gonna kick off with a formal introduction, and from there we're going to jump into your life story. So, Mark House, a West Point graduate who served 6 years on active duty in the U.S. Army. Mark was a field artillery officer with the 82nd Airborne Division, a master parachutist, ranger qualified, and finished his service as a firing battery commander. After earning his engineering degree with a concentration in aerospace, Mark transitioned into construction and architecture, a career that now spans more than 40 years. Mark started out as a project manager, built and sold a specialty contracting firm, and has spent the last 27 years with Beck. At Beck, Mark has held leadership roles ranging from Director of Integrated Services to Director of Human Resources, later running the Florida office for a decade. Today, Mark serves as the firm's managing director and leads strategic projects nationwide. Mark, I'm excited to dig in, but let's start off with childhood, where you grew up
Sure.
and what childhood was like for you.
Well, I'm an Army brat. My dad was also a West Point graduate. I was born in Wiesbaden, Germany, and we moved a couple of times when we were there. And then I don't remember that because we came back to the United States when I was about 3. By the time I went to college, we had moved 21 times. So it was pretty exciting to go to different places. And people ask about, does moving all around bother you, or do you feel like you left something out? And I frankly don't have anything to compare to just living in the same place, because moving around was exciting. And we got to where we moved. We moved several places. We lived at Fort Bragg 3 different times. We lived in El Paso, Texas at Fort Bliss. We lived there 3 times. Washington, D.C. twice. And frankly, you started to see the same people. You went to 3rd grade with somebody, and then later on went to 8th grade with somebody, and then went to high school with that same person. So it was in many ways, people would say, hey, you don't have developed friends because they don't live next door to you for 15 years. Well, we developed friends, and they just happen to be in some other place for a period of time, then you reconnect. So it was great growing up. I ended up graduating from high school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. My dad was at the Army War College stationed there. And then I went to West Point and spent 4 years there. And then my first assignment after you go to school, after you graduate from West Point, you go to some Army, different kind of training schools. And I went to artillery school out in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And I went to Ranger School in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I got to my first duty assignment at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And that was about 9 months after I graduated from college. So you do a lot of training, and then you get to your first assignment, and then you start your first real job. And my first job was
Mark, before jumping into there, because I want to expand on all these in your experiences. Yeah. But in childhood still, I'd imagine that you got inspiration from your dad, who went in that similar path. Is that kind of what keyed you in, inspired you for service?
Yes, and I was around. My dad certainly inspired me, but I was also around a lot of parents that were other fathers that were in the military and serving in the military. Your baseball coach was an Army officer or an NCO. Your football coach was, up until you got into high school, and then then obviously it was more a standard track. But all the volunteer coaches when you're little league and Pee Wee football, they were all parents, and they were Army veterans. So you got a lot of experience of that. I remember my dad took me up to West Point on 2 different occasions, and took our family up there and visited some friends of his. So I got exposed to West Point, not necessarily thinking that I would be in the Army, but it's a good exposure. Now my dad subtly, but he, by the time I was, a sophomore in high school, he said, it'd probably be helpful if you could get a scholarship, because, in the Army, we don't get paid a whole lot. And it'd be really great if you could get a scholarship, work on some things. So I had in my head that I was going to get I was going to try really hard to get a sports scholarship or some kind of scholarship. And a natural way was to a scholarship, if either look at ROTC or look at one of the academies. So when it came time to looking at colleges, I applied for Army, Navy, and Air Force ROTC scholarships, and I applied to all the academies to go to school because, hey, it's free and they pay you to go. And I knew enough about what I was getting into, especially on the Army side, because I'd seen my dad do similar things. So there was that. There was part of it was that, well, doesn't everybody do this?
Yeah, sure.
Shouldn't everybody want to go and serve their country? So there was a little bit of that in me. So, it's kind of like, well, gosh, you were growing up as a kid. They expected you to go to college, and they expected you, the possibility of going to an academy or going and joining the Army. So, but my dad did really great things for me in the fact that he did not pressure me to go. Other than he said, you're really great if you get a scholarship. But that could be to Shippensburg College to play baseball, or that could be to some Tufts or some place like that to go do something. But to help out on the college side. But he did things when I was in high school, looking back on it now, that it really, really helped me. He encouraged me to get, he was always encouraging in sports, but that was something that I really loved to do anyway. But he encouraged in sports, but it also subtly said, well, have you thought about playing quarterback? Quarterback is the leader of the team. Or if you played on the defense, if you're a safety, or things that were subtle, as subtle as the position that you played, shortstop in baseball, that kind of thing was there. Or when I was in high school, that, have you thought about maybe joining the student council? That's something really good. You can get back, so you can kind of get experience in doing leadership. So those are subtle things he did, not the, you should do this because. It's just, think about that. This is something good. And at the end of the day, when I graduated from high school, I had done a lot of things that set me up well for when I applied to college. And so, they look at all the different things you do. It's not just academics or not just one thing. It's a bunch of different things. So he had set me up in a very good way, not really knowing that he was setting me up, but it helped me out an awful lot on that.
Yeah, that's great to hear that.
Yeah. I had worked out. I got an appointment to the Naval Academy to go to their prep school, and I got an appointment to West Point, and I had a couple of ROTC scholarships by the time I graduated. And my dad said, "You don't want to go to the prep school because that's just one more year of college. If you can go directly, you can go ahead." Because if I had a appointment to the Naval Academy and an appointment to West Point, I think there probably was a higher likelihood that I'd go into the Naval Academy, to be honest with you, because I wanted to be a pilot, and Navy seemed to be the easiest route to being a pilot.
Sure. So what ended up swaying you to go to West Point?
It was that I had a direct appointment. So and then I'd been accepted to Auburn to go to college and to Shippensburg, and it just seemed like the right thing to do was to go to West Point. My dad, again, wasn't in the pressure thing. In fact, he was almost like, well, hey, it'd be great to go to Auburn. You'd love it down there. The weather's good. West Point is cold as get out. And, so there wasn't pressure on that, but it was like, think about that. And it was there was only 4,000 cadets, so there's only 1,000 people in your class. So part of it was like, well, there's a small group of unique people. Where going to Auburn, I'd probably have 10,000. No, probably at that time, at least 7,000 or 8,000 people would be my classmates in that class.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That had something to do with it.
Awesome. And did your dad talk to you about service? I don't know if it was in childhood or while you were at West Point, about his service, rather. Sorry.
Oh, a little bit. I mean, I saw, we ate dinner every night. So we talked about what happened, or he would be gone. I mean, he went to Vietnam, and then he went to, deployed several times with Saudi Arabia and some other stuff. So he would share some of that experience. So it was just wasn't, hey, I want to sit down and we'll talk about service. It was just kind of the common dinner table. This is what he was doing. This is what his job was. The thing about the Army or any position is that you're not in the same job for more than 2 years. And even you're a lieutenant colonel when you start to get it for 2 years. Most of the jobs you're in are for 6 months to 18 months. And you're rapidly moving. So things change an awful lot. Where in civilian life, I mean, you could be in a job for 25 years. And that was kind of exciting to say, hey, I'm changing. It changes. It's moving. You're going to move. That's exciting. So the bad thing is if you really get into a job that you really, really love, then well, I've got about a year left of this, and then I got to go to the next thing.
Yep. All right. So we'll go getting into West Point. Any highlights that come to mind?
Getting in, I got in. I guess it's about in April. We had to start at the end of June, beginning of July, and I got my acceptance letter in April. And it was one of those things. Well, you better start thinking about all the different things that happen. That they're going to cut your hair, and you're going to learn to shine shoes. You're going to do all these different things. And, you don't really start thinking hard about that stuff until it gets really close, that last month or so. Uh, and then you're in it. So, uh, getting ready part was just, running an awful lot, physically getting ready to go there. And that's probably the best thing you can possibly do, is to physically be ready, because there's a lot of other pressures that you're there. If you come in unprepared physically, you're way behind the 8 ball.
Mm-hmm. And so going through your West Point degree, at what stage did you start to understand kind of the track that you wanted to go on?
At the end of your sophomore year, you pick nowadays they call it, you pick a major, but when we were there, everybody graduates with an engineering degree.
Right.
And you just had areas of concentration, like civil engineering concentration or whatever. And I chose aerospace engineering because that was the closest thing to flying. Because I remember I said I wanted to be a pilot at some point in time, and I thought, at some point, there are a lot of helicopter pilots in the Army, and every once in a while you run into somebody that gets to be an astronaut. Those are really, really smart guys. But that's where I chose the aerospace engineering side. There's a lot of physics and solids, fluid dynamics type of things, which was that's enjoyable. I was not. I did it, but I wasn't excited about the English or the history stuff. That was great and mandatory, and you could have more of a concentration in, say, history or English or the languages, but it's very heavily engineering weighted. So if I didn't have to write another English paper and I could do a physics class, I'll do that. And that's how I chose to go that way.
That's great. Yeah. So I guess then also, at what point did you understand your trajectory in the Army?
I was fortunate enough that I was able to choose Fort Bragg and the 82nd Airborne Division. I wanted to be in a unit that had a lot of things going on. If something in the world happened, these guys were the first guys to go do something. And my father had been at several different times in his career, had been in the 82nd. So I at least knew from what I'd been trained in the Army, and then I'd seen what he had done at various different levels as a battery commander or a battalion commander in that unit. So I at least knew some aspirations of what I wanted to do. And it's exciting. You're the soldiers, the best soldiers in the Army. They volunteered to be in the Army. That's one. They volunteered to be an airborne. That's two. And in some cases, they volunteered to do some other special things. So they're motivated young people, and you're not having to, poke them and prod them to get up and let's go do something. They're leaning forward, dragging you. So it's a pretty good environment. Everybody's. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you finished there. What was it? Yeah. What was it like when you graduated West Point? You're going to 82nd, and understanding and seeing your dad, who had done both of those things before you. Like, what was that feeling like? It really cool to hear.
It was exciting. It was my dad was much more. He didn't communicate really. He wasn't a soft kind of fuzzy guy, and didn't communicate a whole lot. He was very stern, but he was very, very proud of my career coming forward. And he was still on active duty when he was not retired yet. And his last assignment was at Fort Bragg. And so I had been there for about 3 years. And then he got assigned to Fort Bragg as the chief of staff of 18th Airborne Corps. And so then I got to see him. I was a captain. He was a colonel. And I got to see him on an Army basis. And we even got a chance to go jump together 2 or 3 times, which was really exciting. It was really good to go jump out of an airplane together. But the communication between us changed dramatically, after that point in time. That we communicated a lot more, shared a lot of different things. And I think it was one of those things where he wasn't sure really how to talk to a kid, but he knew how to talk to a lieutenant or a captain. And so it was a good experience, very good experience.
Yeah. That's really amazing. I'd also I don't know, in some form of relatability to what you had just mentioned in terms of your dad's ability to communicate with you. It's also a shared experience, right? Where now all of a
Mm,
sudden, you
right,
really, it's really
right.
unique, right? Both West Point, both Fort Bragg, 82nd. That's really
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I mean, he'd tell me some stories that would really be funny, just hilarious stories. But he couldn't have told me that story as a high school person.
Sure,
But he told
sure.
me later on, and they were absolutely hilarious. And I'm thinking, this is my dad. He wasn't necessarily that funny as a kid growing up, but some of the things that he did and was involved in, it was really it was changed my whole perspective on it a lot.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. All right, so walk us through what it was like. You're graduating West Point, and you're getting to your first assignment at Fort Bragg. It sounds like. What does that transition look like?
It was kind of a phase transition because you graduate, and I remember driving out the gate, and we had 30 days of leave, uh, and so uh, I had bought a brand new. Can't have a car until you're a senior, so I brought a brand new MGB convertible, and so of course you got to have one of those if you're whatever
Right.
graduating. So my parents were stationed out at that time stationed out at Fort Bliss, Texas, which is all the way across the country. And so my brother came up for graduation. He's 2 years younger. And we just kind of drove, we put the top down in the car and we drove to El Paso, Texas. But we took about 2 to 3 weeks to do that.
Mm.
And I didn't have to be at my first duty to Fort Sill until July. And so we'd visit friends. We drove from Dallas which is 600 miles from Dallas to El Paso
Mm.
toward the end. And what we'd do is we'd get up in the morning early, about 7 o'clock, and we'd drive. And if it's the middle of June, put the top down, be driving across the country. And then we would stop at like a Holiday Inn or motel and jump out and jump into the pool. And then we'd jump back in the car and take off, and go on. So we had great cans. I mean, we take a shirt off. We had great cans on our front, and in our back, we were completely white, and our hair was just standing up like that. When we pulled in my parents' house, they looked like who are these guys? And But then I got to a first duty station at Fort Sill, and it was like, as a cadet, you had a lot of things to take. You had 3 meals a day. You went to the mess hall. You had people. Your time was very, very. You measured it, met seconds and minutes from when you go to class and when you did things. Well, this was the first time in 4 years, first time in my life that I found an apartment. I had a roommate. My roommate at Fort Sill was my same roommate at West Point, so we were both went field artillery, and so we lived together in an apartment, and we could go out at night and go to places to dinner at Pizza Hut or something. So because we had never done that.
Mm-hmm.
And the University of Oklahoma was only about 40 miles away. And so we'd drive up to the University of Oklahoma on football weekends. We'd go to football games. And it was just again, we didn't have a lot of those experiences, and got a chance to compact some college experiences into a very short period of time.
Right.
So we had a really good time. Went from there, went to Fort Benning, went to Ranger School after about 6 months at Fort Sill. And that was about a 4-month training school, and then went from there to Fort Bragg, and that's when you first get in your regular unit. So you find a place to live. You're living off post or off the base, and you've got a job then, and you report in the morning, and these are the things that you do during the day, and then you find out, okay, well, next week we're going to go to Pennsylvania to go to do some training. And so we'll train the National Guard. We'll do some different things for a couple of weeks. Then you'll come back home, get everything squared away with all your equipment, and do some training back at Fort Bragg. And then we went to Panama to do a month-long training in Panama at Jungle School. Come back from that, get ready again. And this was the first year I was there. Went from there to Northern Warfare School. Went to Panama in January. Came back and went to Northern Warfare School in Fairbanks, Alaska, in Fort Greeley in March. Never got above about 15 degrees. We lived outside the whole time.
Tough.
So it was, which was a great experience, but it's a month outside in Alaska is a cold. You had two
Sure.
sleeping bags. You put one sleeping bag in the other sleeping bag, and that's how you slept in it because it was so cold. And then we lived in tents outside for the whole month, in either tents or snow caves, and doing the training. And you just go, well, if you're going to fight the Russians, that's where it's going to happen.
Mm.
And so it was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah,
Great experience, but it was really, really something neat. Came back from that, and we went to
that's tough.
went up to Virginia, AP Hill, Virginia. So over the course of my first year at Fort Bragg, I slept in my own bed about 30 days of the 360 days that were there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great training, good soldiers, and you get in great shape, and it's really, really good training.
So kind of expanding on each one of those phases. So that the first phase right after West Point sounds like it was field artillery training. Is that correct?
Field artillery thing. You learn what your basic skills are. You know, the weapon systems that are field artillery, how to calculate the shells from shooting the round, how to shoot downrange. So you're learning how to do all the mathematical calculations to shoot that round. All 6 guns that you have in an artillery battery, and they all shoot at the same time. They all hit the same target, and it may be 10 miles away. And you have to calculate how to do that. You have to figure out, you have, different ways in which to do it. You have to we did it manually. Now they have it's all computerized, but you have to figure out, well, if you shoot something 10 miles away, the round is turning. So it has something called a Coriolis effect. So it'll drift. So you have to calculate the drift that's there. It's in the air a certain amount of time. And believe it or not, the earth actually turns underneath the round and as it's going down range. So you have to calculate that. You may have data on the weather and different humidity. So you'll have to calculate that and charge the round, the elevation of the tubes. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and it takes a while to learn all those things. And then you also learn how to be out, what's called a forward observer. You're out downrange, and you're the one with the binoculars that's telling the guys back where the guns are where to shoot, and you'll give them the grid coordinates, and then they'll calculate it. And then if they hit it like 100 yards to the right, you adjust the fire so that they hit it. Then you also learn to call in aircraft. So if a jet or a helicopter comes in, you identify the target, sometimes laser target, and then adjust that fire. So that was a lot of fun. I did not ever get shot at in combat, but it's pretty exciting when you've got a lot of assets and the resources deploying on the bad guys, and you know that can happen.
Yeah, that's a great school.
Learn a lot of stuff at Fort Sill on that thing, and then you go to Fort Bragg and you get to go out and practically use it. You're in a unit and practically using those skills.
Got it. Yeah, got it. So how did Ranger School come about? I mean, is that something that you kind of asked to attend, or you were sent because of performance? How did that work?
One, you volunteer, and probably 10% of the people that volunteer, then you have to go through a physical test and several other tests, and then you get accepted to Ranger School. And then only about 50% of the people graduate go all the way through without having to repeat something, because some people get hurt. It's very easy to get hurt during the process in mountaineering or some other stuff. I had cracked my ribs and had to go back one cycle during the torso when I was in Ranger School. But so it's a very small group of people that you volunteer, and then you make sure you're qualified, and then you go through the school. So it was a great experience. Lose a little weight, you lose a little sleep, but you learn an awful lot about yourself, and learn about your classmates and your buddies, your Ranger buddies.
Awesome. And then the other experience in that first year I wanted you to expand on was Alaska. Yeah,
that was I had never been in a cold weather type of environment. you get the idea that we jumped in there, and the vastness of it. It's so big. You'll be up on top of a mountain and you'll see for 80 or 90 miles, and you won't see any sign of civilization, a road, anything. And it kind of comes on you and say, look, this is what it would be like fighting in the Soviet Union, or if they're going to come our way, they're going to be coming through Alaska. And it's just so vast. The other thing is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. And you can see forever the mountains and the rivers, and the other thing is, we walked everywhere or went through the snow. We had snowshoes, we had skis, and sleds, and you pulled the sled. So if you went anywhere, you weren't going fast, you were going pretty slow, and you're bringing everything with you. You could move around by helicopter a little bit, but generally you slugged it out through the snow. And so that really put it in perception of, gosh, that's not easy.
No, that's an absolutely brutal environment to get through. How did you avoid like hypothermia or frostbite, like especially on your hands or your feet, for example?
We had really good equipment. I mean, we had really good mittens, and you always, as an officer, you're always looking at your soldiers, making sure that they aren't going hypothermic, they aren't having problems or issues. And then you have somebody looking at you, say, hey, sir, you look, your skin's been exposed. They did a lot of training of making sure your skin wasn't exposed when out in the wind or when it's really, really cold. So because your skin can get frostbite pretty quickly. But just a lot of training and awareness and looking out for you. As the officer, you're looking out for your soldiers all the time. The NCOs are looking out for your soldiers. And then by that is kind of the habit of looking out for each other.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's totally brutal to get through, but in hindsight, really awesome experience to have gone through as well.
Yeah, it was. I'm very, very happy to have done that.
Awesome. So from there, you got back to Fort Bragg, and then Panama, right? What happens thereafter?
Panama's jungle training, and you learn, how it's to fight in South America or Asia in the jungles. How difficult it is, how dense the jungle is, how to move, how to navigate through the jungle. It's pretty amazing. It's you wonder why, how people can live there back in the jungle for long periods of time, because it's there's a lot of bugs, there's a lot of animals, there's a lot of stuff that you just kind of got to watch out for. But and how to move through that and not get lost, because you could have stuff as thick as you can't even see in front of your face during the middle of the day, and then at night you cannot see anything. It is dark black and you can't see a thing. So you learn how to adapt and figure it out, and so it was good training. That was something I was glad. I wish we would have had maybe gone and had a little break between it, but we had, I think, about 15 or 20 days by the time we came back from Panama and then went immediately to Alaska.
It seems like pretty polar opposite environments.
Yes, it was.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what happens after that? So we were finishing up with Panama and Alaska. I forgot which was first, but thereafter.
Yeah. Come back. And then that's summertime starts, and summertime at Fort Bragg meant that you did one of really three things. One, you are on the immediate reaction force. And that means that within 12 hours, you have to be ready to deploy anywhere in the world. Your unit does. And so you're usually on that for about 6 weeks. And then you rotate and you do, first thing you do is you do that, and then you go through stand down, and you may do some school training. Like they'll send you to a 6-week training program where that's chemical warfare training, but it's classroom stuff. It's not there. So you'll do that for that 6 weeks. Then you go what's called intensified training for 6 weeks, and you're getting ready to go be deployed, so to speak. So you'll do that for 6 weeks, and then you go into immediate reaction because you're trained up, you're ready to go, and then for 6 weeks, you're sitting at home, not home, sitting at Fort Bragg, ready to go. And you may do some things where they'll do a practice deployment. They'll alert you. You'll go through the cycle of, hey, we're going to issue you your parachutes to take you down to Pope Air Force Base, and then we'll go somewhere for an exercise. So we'll jump into North Florida and do a simulated take an airfield and hold the airfield. We'll do some things like that. So it was pretty much all these cycles, and it got to be pretty routine. But I moved from what's called a Fort Observer the first year I was there at Fort Bragg, and then I went to be what's called a Fire Direction Officer, which is the guys that calculate how to, the guns that go downrange. So you do you're the guys that do all the calculation, give the messages to the guns. They put all the data in the guns, and then they shoot the guns to hopefully hit it on target. So I did that for about 6 months. And we still did those things where we went different places training. And then I was selected to be an aide for a general, for the assistant division commander. Every general officer has a lieutenant or a captain that's their aide, and you're basically responsible for taking care of them. And from getting them all the information, getting them briefed correctly, getting them to different places. So I did that for a year and got a chance to go to a lot of different places. We jumped into someplace in Pennsylvania. We went on a lot of different, we'd go watch training. So if a infantry battalion would go out and they would go train in Colorado, we'd go observe training there in Colorado to do that. So I did that a year. And then I came back to the field artillery battalion that I was in, and I became what's called a battery commander, where I was in charge of a moderate sized unit. I had two commands. One was a headquarters battery command. And the headquarters battery has the supply, maintenance, all the support stuff for the battalion. And I did that for about 6 months. And then I got what's called a firing battery, which are the guns and the Fort Observers to go support an infantry battalion. And I did that for about a year. And that was my last assignment.
As you're shifting roles, is there some form of workup or training for you to integrate or understand, or is it just kind of like a crossover with whoever you're replacing?
You're it. You're selected. You're it. And that's the good thing about the Army is that you're not in these positions for long periods of time, but you got a lot of other comrades around you. It's not like they're throwing you out there to be by yourself. There's peers, and then there's your superiors that they have expectations. If you just take on being a fire and battery commander, people know that, hey, you're the first day of the job, you're not going to know everything, and they're going to help you out. It's not in anybody's benefit to see somebody fail. So there's a lot of camaraderie helping people out, and then you learn pretty fast. I mean, I think that the cycle, as a young lieutenant, you have to start learning fast. So you learn how to learn fast.
Yeah.
And so it becomes kind of second nature. Say, okay, these are the things I got to do. These are the things I got to, if I can learn these things, there's the basics, then I can build on that. The other thing is you have NCOs, the non-commissioned officers, that are really great. Now, they may be in positions for long periods of time. Those guys will stay at the same post for years, and then they may be in the same position for 3 or 4 years. And so they can help you out an awful lot. And you have to immediately recognize, well, these guys I need to lean on pretty hard. And say, Staff Sergeant, I do not know this very well. I need your help. My job is to help support you and help the soldiers and keep the admin stuff off your back. And then your job is to give me everything that's in your head and put it in my head. And if you can communicate that to your soldiers and to your NCOs, you go a long way. Don't ever act like you know everything. Act like you would like to know everything. But certainly don't act like you do.
Yeah, the learning how to learn fast dynamic is fascinating, and I don't know how repeatable or I don't know, I guess how obvious that kind of capability is in civilian life. but I think it's really unique to military environment.
Yeah. I think it's a transparency and a trust that,
Mm.
My experience can go into civilian life is people weren't really going to willing to tell you a lot of things.
Mm.
They're kind of, well, let them go out on their own and kind of flop around, figure it out. Well, in the military, it doesn't do anybody any good. You don't want that guy out there flopping around, because what he's doing may affect me. And it may affect me in a way that it's life changing. So we want that dude to succeed, and so that he can take care of me and I can take care of him. Civilian life, there may be other motivations. Hey, I want that guy's job, and if he fails, then I may have that job. Nobody's getting hurt physically, but and it's just kind of a mindset. There's a lot of taking care of each other in the military, especially in these smaller units that are specialty units.
Sure. Yeah. Really interesting dynamic to think about, and think about how to replicate, at least to some degree, in civilian life could only be beneficial to the overarching goal and team.
And I think doing things in a stressful environment is very helpful, because if you've got a small group of people and you're going through a stressful environment, you have to support and lean on each other. Being together for 24 hours is a big deal. If you check in, you're spending 6, 7 hours, 8 hours.
So we were talking about the dynamic of learning how to learn fast in military, and kind of bridging that in at least some capacity to the civilian world.
Right. Being together, like I said, for 24 hours at a time, or being in stressful environments. If you go to work 8 to 5 and you leave, you're assuming the stress kind of goes away. You go to your family, or you go to your friends or whatever, and then you crank up again the next day. In the Army, that next day just never ends. You're there all the time. And so the stress level is up, which is good, because stress is good. It's like working out. It's like working out your muscles. Muscles are stressed, your brain is stressed, and then you get better at it. And I think that having that experience in the Army, that stress level comes way up, and you prolong it, and then you get a chance to rest. But I don't think the stress level in the civilian area. It's like you can check out. That you can check out on it. Where there are some jobs there's not a lot of jobs that people just lay in bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, I wish it was 6 months from now, because then the stress would go away. There aren't many of those things from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It's just an interesting concept to think in terms of like converting it to civilian life. So going into your last role in your service, at what point did you start to think about, okay, I'm finishing here, what's next?
I had a 5-year commitment after I graduated, and I had passed that 5-year commitment, and I was still at Fort Bragg. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was, or I thought I wanted to do, is to go to graduate school and then go back to West Point to teach. And that would get me through probably 12 years in the Army, and then I would go back to a regular Army unit, and just at a major position. So I knew that kind of was on the horizon. I also knew, because my dad was in the Army and had done similar type of jobs, I kind of knew what I was going to be doing for the next 15 years. If things played out, I would go to this school, I would go to this assignment, so I knew kind of what it was. And I had a military ID card from the time I guess I was born, so my parents had retired. They moved to Tampa, Florida. I wasn't married, and I didn't have any serious girlfriend or anything. And I came home to visit my parents about 6 months before I was either due to leave Fort Bragg. And I was going to go to leave Fort Bragg and go to another school, and then go to grad school, or go to Korea and then go to grad school. So there was a couple of different things. I knew what was out there. Well, I met a while I was home visiting my parents, I met a guy that was a retired Navy admiral, CB, who's a construction guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him through a luncheon that my dad had gone. And we were talking, and he said, and he owned a construction firm, but I didn't know that. I said, he asked me what I did, and he goes, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal last week about West Point graduates, and I need to hire one. And they do what you tell them to do. They're honest, and they'll get the job. And so that's when I said, well, what do you do? And that's what the point said, what do you do? He said, well, I own a construction company, and we do commercial construction. We do schools and office buildings, jails and things. He said, why don't you come to my office tomorrow morning and I'll talk to you? I did. And he said, well, I'd like you to come work for me. And he said, how much money do you make? And at the time, I was like, I knew kind of, because so much of our money was non-taxable. Jump pay was non-taxable. All sorts of other things were non-taxable. So I was quickly going in my head, well, I don't know. So I said, oh, well, I think I make $32,000 a year. And I would be honest with you. I think I make that much, but some of it's non-tax and some of the other stuff. He goes, well, you come to work for me and I'll pay you $40,000 a year. So that's just a pretty significant increase. That's over a 25% increase. And we'll start you out as a project manager, and then we'll start to look at different things, and we'll teach you how to do construction. You have the leadership skills, to lead people, but we will teach you the construction skills. And so I thought, I'll do this. So so when it was time for me to move, I said, hey, I'm gonna get out of the Army. And but I knew at the time I was going to, because I had a friend that was a couple years older than I was, and he was also a West Point grad. I knew that if he got out of the Army, went to work for Procter & Gamble, hated it, didn't like it at all, and then decided he wanted to get back in the Army, got back in the Army. This is during when Ronald Reagan was the president. And so I said, if I get out of the Army and I don't like it, I've already done all the things I need to do as a captain. I'll get back in the Army and really won't miss a beat. I can, and I know what I'm going to be doing for the next 20 years. So I got out. Tampa, Florida is a great place to live. You're near the beach. It's warm. You're not sleeping underneath pine trees. So I got into the construction industry, and the construction industry is amazingly similar to the Army. The organizational structure is virtually the same. So if you're a project manager, that's like being a platoon leader or a company commander, because you have a superintendent, which is just like your first sergeant or your platoon sergeant. And then you have people below you that are either your lieutenants, which are like project engineers, and you have the subcontractors that are like the soldiers. Organizational structure is exactly the same. So that was a pretty easy transition, but I needed to know nomenclature. What is rebar? What is a soffit? I didn't know what those things were, but the same thing. Nobody would know if they came in the Army what an ogive was. Well, that's the thing that's the ring that's on the outside of an artillery shell, or what an RTEP is, a readiness test. So it's just a matter of like speaking another language. You need to learn that other language and what things do in the process. And so they started me out in estimating, which I learned the language. And then very quickly I got to go out on jobs and be a project manager and build buildings. Did that for a couple of years, and then found that through my Army training, you show up on time with the stuff that you need to accomplish the mission. That was show up on time with the stuff you need to accomplish the mission. And that's not that doesn't happen that much in civilian life. It just, things happen. If you say we got to be done by Friday and it doesn't get done, it's like, well, the consequences are, well, we'll be there. Right. And the Army's like, we'll be there Friday. You're done by Friday. It's just, you're done. Or there are significant consequences. So the subcontractors on the job site, specifically the subcontractors that do the finished trades, the carpet guys, the painters, the ceiling guys, the drywall guys, the last push on the job is always where it's just calamity. When you're putting the concrete in, you're putting the footers in, you're putting the structural steel up, that seems to move along, but there's not really a deadline on those things. So if somebody's a couple of days late, people aren't really panicking yet. But boy, when you get down to that last 2 or 3 weeks and the guy hasn't painted the wall, or they had, and it's, well, they didn't show up on time, or they didn't have the right stuff, or they had the wrong color carpet. It was like, so I got to know a couple of guys that were in the commercial flooring business, that they came and they're the last guys in. And it was like the circus. When they would come rolling in, it was the circus. And I thought, my God, it's got to be better. If you just had the right stuff, showed up on time, did what you said you were going to do, you would beat 80% of them. And so I went to my boss and said, look, I got this idea. I would like to start my own business, and it would be the commercial floor covering business. And he said, well, I tell you do that, I'll give you your first job. And so that's what I did. I've got a laptop computer, and I got an SBA loan, and I started working out of my house. And so started a commercial floor covering business. We did hospitals, we did a lot of healthcare type things, and it grew. And I had a buddy of mine, classmate of mine from West Point, that got out right after the first Gulf War, and he wanted to get out of the Army. And I said, well, this is what we do. And he had a master's degree in robotics from Penn. He said, well, we can figure out this carpet stuff. So we did. So we did that for about 10 years, and we grew very, very rapidly. We made Inc. magazine's top fastest 500 growing companies in America.
Wow.
We did some cool stuff, but it was one of these things. Hey, show up on time with the right stuff and do what you say you're going to do. And it was that simple. That simple. And we hired a bunch of veterans, soldiers that had gotten out after 4 or 5, 6 years. My platoon sergeant, when I was a lieutenant, he retired. He was our kind of our head of operations. So we had a lot of vet guys, and so we grew the company, and then we sold the company to Shaw Industries, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and we sold it and did fine. And then I stayed on for 2 years, and it's a big organization. Shaw Industries is a publicly traded company. It's they worry about things like days sales outstanding, a lot of things that just in my mind aren't that important, because the thing that they're talking about important doesn't give you the ability to show up on time with the right stuff and do the right thing. And so by the time my time was over, I'm sure they were as tired of me as I was tired of them. And so I was going to start another business, and one of our biggest customers, Beck, the guy that was running the Florida region, said, hey, why don't you come work for us? You can do this new thing, because it was called integrated services, where we have architects and construction people all work together, and we do design and build projects. And you've got a background, you can do this, and we're going to start this thing new. Instead of starting your own business, why don't you start this division for us? And so I did that for Florida, and it was, again, same deal. Construction, organizational skills. I would take in Ranger School, they give you a Ranger handbook, and the Ranger handbook is about that thick, but it's a little like this. And you have something in it called the operations order. And if you write an operations order, if you have any mission you need to accomplish, you have to bring out your operations order. And if you do the 5 paragraphs in the operations order, you pretty well will accomplish the mission. If you do those things, you won't miss anything. It's like, Rangers say, don't forget anything. This allows you not to forget anything. And so I take out my Ranger handbook, and I go, okay, the situation. So situation is, well, what's happening? customer needs to have a new office building built in this time frame. We're pursuing it. We haven't won it, but there's competition that's pursuing it. So that gives you and how are we, what is the customer like? So you get a sense of the situation, and then you get the mission. That's the number 2 thing. Here's the mission. We're going to win this job, and then we're going to build this building. How are we going to win this job? So that's the next thing. Then the third paragraph is execution. That's all the details about how are you going to do this? And then you have the fourth paragraph, command and signal, which is, well, who's in charge and how are we going to communicate with each other? And the last one is service support. What help do you need? Do I need estimating support? Whatever. And if you do all those things and fill it all out in detail, you got a plan. You got a business plan.
Mm.
And so
that's awesome.
I have my original Ranger handbook. It sits in my desk. And when time comes, we have to do something. I pull it out and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And if you're talking to other people in the military, if they're in the organization, they start laughing because they know, well, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
That's
a great structure. Yeah, it's a great structure for a plan.
Very good, easy structure.
Totally, yeah. I want to put a pin on where we're at there and take a step back to touch on a few things that we kind of ran through. First and foremost is transition period. So military to civilian life. You obviously had an awesome happenstance opportunity that allowed you to segue.
Right.
Nonetheless, you are still shifting from military service to civilian life. So talk to us a little bit about what that was like for you.
I think the biggest thing by far was the missing of the camaraderie. I think because you have your really close friends and your soldiers and everything, and it's just not as close. You will get close in the civilian sector. You will get close to some people, but the immediacy of getting close to somebody in the military, it'll happen very, very quickly because you're in a stressful situation. You come together with people. So you miss that camaraderie. People go home at 5:00. You see it, where you may spend more time with them in the Army. That was one thing. And the other thing was the urgency. And I go back to that thing. It's got to be done by Friday night.
Yeah.
Is that the sense of urgency in the military really took me by surprise. I thought that everybody had that same sense of urgency. So that took me a little bit. And the other one was sometimes people just tell you what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And it's not that anybody's trying to deceive you or lie to you. They'll tell you what you want to hear. And you're thinking that they're really telling you what's going to happen or that they're really going to do this or whatever, because why wouldn't they? But, there's this, I'm not saying everybody does, but there's just, that occasionally happens. People they'll tell you what they think you want to hear to make you happy. Right. And so those things were a little bit more challenging for me to get through. The other thing is, I moved from Fort Bragg, North Carolina to Tampa, Florida. And I had my parents were here. They were in the same city, but all my support network of my buddies were not there. They're gone. And I would go into a new job and nobody other than the admiral had any kind of military. Well, actually, there was another guy. And he was a retired Navy CB Master Chief because the admiral had hired him when he retired, and so he was a vice president or something. But nobody else had any kind of military experience, and they looked at you like you're, oh, here's this guy. He's like an animal in the zoo to some degree.
Yeah.
So that was, I didn't have anybody that was my age. I was 27 years old. That I could just hang out with, or that had a similar experience. That was hard.
Yeah,
not hard.
So what kind of?
It wasn't hard. It was a change.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's jarring any way you look at it, right? Because I mean, it's a significant change in terms of what you're used to culturally and work, professionally. Right. So in hindsight, what kind of advice would you give transition and service members, getting through all of what you said is, very relevant to, today and anyone going through that situation.
I would say this goes across the board with anybody. When you're going to change jobs, you go to a job that you go to some place you're going to really like. And it's hard to know if you're really going to like it, but you want to spend time interviewing the people and the company that you're going to go work for. You interview them. They're interviewing you. You need to interview them because you need to be happy and enjoy what you're doing, because you're going to spend 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. The majority of your waking hours are going to be with these people. Yeah. And if they're doing something that's not enjoyable, that's not fun. And if they're a bunch of jerks, then that's not fun. So be very, very choosy and picky about where you go work. And don't just, I think that because you're in the military, that you don't have an option about where you're going to go work. They say, hey, would you like to have this job? And you say, yes, sir, I'd like this job. That's, you're going to go do this. Very seldom do you get a chance to say, I want that job, and they want you, and say, the stars have to align. You just go where they tell you to go. So you have that as you get out of the Army or you get out of the military, you go, well, I'm going to go and interview with them and they tell me where to go. I mean, I don't have a choice. You have a choice. Yeah. You have a choice, and you should be very, I don't want to say hard to get, but a little bit of hard to get. Think about when you're in high school and the good looking, dates out there, and you get play a little hard to get. So that's one thing that you don't have to jump at the first thing. And the other thing is that applies to anybody, whether it be military or not. And the other thing is, it's not always greener on the other side. It may appear that it is. Really do your homework. Don't make a quick decision. Don't jump at the first opportunity. Really ponder it through. Think about it. What if that? What is it? Find somebody that works there. Talk to them. Find as many, do as much research as you possibly can. That would be my first suggestion. The problem with the Army is that if you're getting out, there isn't that lifeline. You're just out there. And so you're interviewing with a couple of different companies. And you really you don't know a whole lot about it. That's hard. And I don't know the answer other than just really research the heck out of it. Have it as long of an interview process as possible. You'll get frustrated. You'll be like, well, I didn't hear from them for a week. But stretch that thing out. And so.
Yeah, it's great. No, I think it's great advice, and it's also similar to what a lot of other veterans have said on the show as well, in terms of their hindsight advice. So it's good to hear that emphasis on don't just jump at the first opportunity. Actually, make sure it's something that makes sense.
I probably am a 1 in 1,000 deal. I met a guy. He said, I would like to hire you, and after the thing was, what do you do? I didn't and it just so happened it was in a field that I was an engineer. That helped. He had been in the military. That helped. Right. But it was just pure luck. Good Lord's looking after me. And it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to say, certainly, luck being a factor, just happenstance, you meeting him at that time. That said, you did go through West Point, which was one of the criteria he was looking for. So you did put in, the work and experience to provide the opportunity for luck.
Right. You make your own luck.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's no question I was positioned at the right. I had the credentials. I had done the work. And then it so happened that it linked up correctly. There's one thing. You can plan a lot of things in your life and have objectives or have goals. And then you have to do the work to have the opportunity to get that goal. Exactly. It's not so much that you're going to get it every time, but you're going to have the opportunity. But you've got to do the work to be ready to go do that.
Exactly. Yep.
And the
100%
military
agree.
has allowed you to do that, to do that work, to be ready.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So moving forward past the transition period and going into when you started the business that you ended up selling, one thing that came in mind, how long were you at that first role before you started this business?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. Awesome. That's
Yeah.
quick. That's quick.
It's fast. It's fast, but you think about the military, it's like, well, that's 2 jobs.
Right.
I mean, what we do is not that complicated, especially on the when you're building a project, you know the sequence of events that happen, you know the language that's going, and then now I'm going to say of that year-long project, I'm going to focus only on the last 3 weeks, and that's all I'm going to focus on.
Right.
And it's all this other stuff's got to happen, but I'm going to be a subcontractor. I'm going to focus on this. Makes it a lot easier. That made it a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a good way to compartmentalize and kind of focus on the mission there. That's really cool. What was, I guess, kind of two-part question. What was like initiating factors that allowed you to just scale, I guess, a little bit, scale in the beginning, and then the secondary factors that allowed you to, truly grow?
I think the first factor is I was very naive about business. I thought, hey, I went to West Point. I was successful. I did these different things. Therefore, I can go do this. I should go into the bank. I remember I needed a bank account, and I needed in my Ranger handbook business plan, I needed $100,000 for operating capital. I put some of my own money in, but I needed a credit line of $100,000. Went into the bank, had my plan, and they just looked at me like I was an idiot. Like, well, if you had the things, well, if you had $100,000 and you could put it in our bank, then we'd gladly lend you $100,000. It's like, well, if I had $100,000, we'd be coming here. And then they said, well, we need credit, we need, all this different stuff. And I'm like, whatever, I was in the Army. I defended our country. I went to West Point. I'm going to pay you back. That my signature is better than gold. No, it's not. It's not. You need to have $100,000 in the bank, and you need to have, how you need to have all this different stuff. So that was a shock. That was going to, hey, that was very naive about that. But hey, you figured out. I ended up working who had known somebody that was in the private equity world, and I found an angel investor, and he liked the story, and away we went.
Wow.
He lent us the money, and when we sold the company, he did okay. But it was I was just really naive about that kind of thing. At West Point, they teach you don't lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. If you lie or if you cheat, if you did anything, you're gone. There's just no second chance. It's just get your bags and you're gone. And so it's like, well, isn't everybody doing that?
Right. Well, that's good. You carried those principles over.
Yeah, and everybody. So I was just kind of naive on a lot of that. Some of it, I think, was good that I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that back when we started the company in 1990, I did not know that the country was in a recession. Did not know, because it's not something you didn't hear. Well, you're in a recession. You didn't hear that on TV, or at least I didn't know. It was just, well, hey, you just work hard and hustle, and you'll get work and things happen. I didn't know until I was reading a book, and they said the Great Recession, not Great Recession. There's a recession, in a cyclical recession in 1990 through 92. Well, we started the company. But you find out, it's like, well, I also read a book that said some of the best times to start a business are during a recession, because the companies that are rocking along and have it kind of well, they haven't been working really hard. Maybe they have, but they haven't worked really hard. But it's tough for them to move and maneuver. If you're a small company, just as a startup, you can do a lot of different things. If it didn't work one day, you can try something else the next day. And you can't do that if you've got a bunch of infrastructure in place, and it's tough to move. I can say that right now with Beck. We're a big company, and if I come in with some wild idea, we can't do that for months.
Right. Yep.
So I get it. So
yeah.
But it was a lot of just hard work, naive. When my buddy from a classmate, we used to do stuff. One, because we got a little extra money to do it, but we had all our labor guys that install the floor covering, and we'd have another group that come in and tear it all up. So if you did an office building and you had 3 floors in an office building, they'd move the furniture out of the way, all the systems furniture, and you rip up all this carpet, and then you come back in and you put in new carpet and put the system furniture back in place. And so we came up with an idea that you take little jacks, little bottle jacks, and you could hook them into the systems furniture, because we'd take the hangers and turn them upside down and put them on it, and we'd take like 8 or 10 bottle jacks, and you could lift the systems furniture up. So all you had was the bottle jacks there, and the whole thing was up, so they didn't disconnect their computers, they didn't disconnect the phones, and didn't disassemble all the systems furniture. And you'd rip out all the carpet, and you'd go back in there with carpet tile, the 18-inch by 18-inch carpet tile, and you could slide it all back in, and then you lift it all down. And we started doing that, and that was like home run. Awesome. That was a home run, and we did it all over the country, and it was about 20% of the cost of a new, so ADP or Chase, JP Morgan would have these great big operation centers, and people would be in those things for 6 or 7 years, 8 years, and the carpet would be worn out, and they would have to shut down a whole floor, send people home for 3 or 4 days on paid vacation, and then you had the IT people come in, you had the electrical people come in, you had the system. So it was a calamity, and it was going to take about 3 weeks to do what we could do in about 3 days at night. We'd come in at night and do it. And so we'd make
that's awesome,
good money, and they would be really happy because it cost them a lot less money. And that was one of the things, the kind of the differentiator moment we did that helped us get sold. I mean, people recognized that this is what we could do. And so we did the normal stuff, but that was the stuff that really kind of accelerated everything. And
amazing, yeah.
It was.
How did you get in front of people, right? So like you came up with this idea, you're still a small business, and companies don't know who you are really. So how did you leverage the idea and get in front of businesses to expand?
What I would do when I first started was, I had been a project manager for a construction company, and I knew what the schedule was, and I knew how to build a building. I wasn't way experienced, but I'd built several buildings. But so the customers that you want to sell to, that are general contractors. That's your first general contractor. They're building a building. They got to buy the concrete. They got to buy the steel. They got to buy, and they get down to the drywall, and those aren't very significant, meaningful sub-trades. The big sub-trades are the steel and the concrete and the glass. These are bothers, annoyances. So I would go in, I said, I'm going to talk to the estimator, and I explained who I was, and I said, I think, and I had my laptop computer with me. I said, I'll do my estimate right here in front of you, and I'll give you the price right here. and then if I got to talk to the project managers doing the job, I'd say, tell me about your schedule. And so we talked, and then he realized pretty quickly that, like, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's not the same old guy that came in to sell us the floor coming before, to drive up in his Firebird, and he had a couple of samples, and he gets the blueprints, and he leaves them, and he comes and says, I'll be back in a week. And maybe the estimate's right, maybe it's not. But I wouldn't leave until here's my estimate. You call me when I'm done, or when you're ready to make the decision. And so that's how we started. Amazing. And it was a pretty easy sale. I mean, if you're cost competitive, because again, it didn't matter that much if you were not the lowest guy. with the floor covering guy, the steel was so much more expensive.
Right.
And so what was important there was that you got to get done. That was the important thing. You got to be done on time, and then you'd lost all this time because everybody's dorking around at the front. Oh, we'll make it up. We'll make it up. We'll make it up. We'll have some rainy days. We'll have some stuff like that. Well, then all of a sudden the end date didn't change. The end date's right there.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, what's going to happen? We got to pick the guys that are going to get it done for us.
Yeah.
And we got a reputation getting it done, and being reasonable people to deal with, and things happen. I mean, the manufacturer will ship it late. They're not ready. That's the other thing. I can't tell you how many times the contractor would call and say, "We're ready for you," and you get there and like the windows aren't in. What do you mean you're ready? Well, the end date hasn't changed. The end date hadn't changed. So they know that they can't get those people in until you get the floor in. But what about the windows or the air conditioning? The air conditioning's got to be on. I mean, the humidity's got to be sucked out of the air so that you can paint. Or they go, we're going to have the painters and the drywallers and the ceiling guys and the floor covering guys. We're going to have them all in the same place, same time. And you guys work it out. I mean, seriously, it's like, you guys work it out. Like, so you just had to learn how to deal with that. But they were all skills that you learned when you're in the Army, because when you're in the Army, always things happen to you that were not expected. You got all your plan, your Ranger handbook, everything in the plan. Well, first thing, something's going to go wrong, and it's going to change. You're supposed to be here at this time. Well, it's just raining like crazy. You got lost, so you can't get. So it's, what are you going to do? You have to adapt on the fly, and so the military training really helpful.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So fast forward in a bit to selling the company and then starting with Beck. What was that like to, I guess, then shift back into a very structured organization and a new role?
Yeah. I knew a lot of the people at Beck because we had worked for them. So that was a good thing. So I wasn't jumping into somewhere I didn't know anybody. And they put me in a position where I had authority to go do things, which was good, instead of just saying, hey. And the expectations also were very low. That was the other thing I found out a little bit. It's like, we're starting this new thing. Nobody really knows what's going on. Expectations are really low.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go out and figure out how to get some small medical office buildings. I knew a developer. He wanted to develop these medical office buildings. So we can do that. We'll design them and we'll build them for you. And he knew me, so he's like, I trust you. And so we did. So we started out very small, did those things, and then we started creeping up into the bigger type of buildings. And building a little business that we could do, where we had architecture and construction. And so we developed a story of, back when Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, especially Michelangelo and da Vinci, back in those times, they designed buildings, they designed statues, they designed these things, and they built them. It was one thing. They did both of them. And because they designed it, it was really good because they built it better. And somewhere in the late 1800s, early 1900s, architecture and construction kind of diverged. And so architects would design something, construction people would build it after they designed it. Architects are artists. The painting that's on your wall behind you, if you ask that artist, how long did that take you to paint? They don't know. How much was the canvas? They don't know. How much was the paint? They don't know. If they say something, they're usually making something up. Now, the construction people, if they had to paint, one, it would be like white canvas, black dot, because that's the easiest thing to paint. That's the most economical thing to do. That's the piece of art. White canvas, black dot. They know how much the black dot costs to paint. They know how much the canvas cost, and they know how long it took them to take. It's a crappy piece of art. Terrible piece of art. But they know how much it costs. The the artist, great piece of art, but they had no idea how long it took her. So you got to go back and say, how do you get this together and work this together? And so that's what Design-Build is. And I could tell a story about it and convince people to, hey, give us a chance. It just makes sense. You can't say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Let's think this through. Well, I don't trust those contractors. They're jamming us all the time. Well, what if I give you completely open book, every subcontractor, you're going to know exactly what the cost is. You're going to know exactly. I have overhead on the job, so you know how much my superintendent gets paid. You're going to know how much I get paid. That's my overhead. And then I want 5% as my profit. Is that fair? I'm taking all the risk I'm going to be on time. Is that fair? Let's go do this. And we kind of started that way.
That's awesome. So at that time was the whole design, because nowadays Design-Build, I don't think
it's pretty well accepted.
It's well accepted. Exactly. Yeah.
25-30% of the business is Design-Build.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. And back then, maybe 5%, so not a lot.
But in terms of like the market, how aware were people of Design-Build at that time?
Not a lot. Most of them weren't. The only people who really knew a lot about it were specialty. I think it's kind of, this will always stick in my mind. It was a candy manufacturer or a candy company. And they had a factory to make the candy. And so very, very complicated, specific type of factory. And so they hired an engineering construction company to build it. And they basically designed it as the candy people wanted it designed. So they said, this is what we need. And so that's how it was. So in the beginning, they were very, very specific, complicated buildings that were very user specific. AT&T that had switch gear and special type telecommunication stuff. Data centers at the beginning. Now you hear about data centers all the time now with AI. Data centers back in that time they're very complicated. Not many of them. That was a Design-Build project. So then it became, well, why don't we do the easy ones? And so it's still sometimes people think they know better than anybody else. And that's when you go, well, I'm just going to have to do whatever the normal process is because we can't convince this person that this is going to be less painful. Construction is a controlled plane crash. You're coming in and you're landing this beast and it's going to land and you're trying to minimize the casualties and minimize the destruction because all this stuff comes from all over the world and it's all coming to one place and it has to be sequenced in. And if any one thing gets screwed up, then you're moving things all around. Weather plays into it. People's attitude play into it. All these different things that you don't have direct control over. And then you're just trying to make those little adjustments as the wind blows. You're making that adjustment as this happens, and you're just bringing it on in, so that person that has your building, because they want the building finished. Because when that building is finished is when they start generating money. That's when if they're AT&T, the building's finished, they generate money. If you're Home Shopping Network, you finished, you generate money. The construction process is just a necessary evil to get to the end to generate what they do. Charles Schwab, Absolutely. They just want to put their people in a building. They can call the people and send me your money. So
Absolutely, yeah. So that's one of and I'm going to segue this into translatable skills, but it's one of my just favorite takeaways personally, which is, military to built environment. And that's, adapt, prepare, adapt, execute, and continuously through a project. That being said, I want to, take this opportunity to specifically highlight translatable skills, military to built environment. You did mention a handful as we were talking, so, feel free to mention them again, but, in this specific setting.
I say, being very transparent and communicating, in the military, when you're communicating to somebody, it has to be transparent. You have to be, that's what it is. Civilian life, people kind of like to sugarcoat some things. bad news doesn't get better with any kind of age. That's a true statement. And, people have the inclination of saying, you know what? Maybe that steel's going to come in on time. Instead of going to the owner and say, look, hey, it's hung up in, it's hung up in customs.
Mm-hmm.
This is the consequences of this, what's happening. Give them all the, tell them what it is. People appreciate that. That's one thing with the military, you just tell the truth, and what it is kind of unvarnished. The sense of urgency, getting the job done, and getting it done on time is something that's very translatable. The some skills that are in the military, I mean, if you look at translating to the construction environment, the Army Corps of Engineers, the people that went out and build things in Afghanistan or in Iraq or whatever, and they're building schools out there, which a lot of people did that. Built roads, a lot of people did that. If you can find some of those folks, they're used to do things under stress, get in the right place, the right time, and people are shooting at them while they're doing it. So, those folks have got a lot of experience. The Navy Seabees, the same kind of thing. And the Marines have a group of engineers that do that stuff, more civil, kind of putting runway type things in. But the skills are very, very translatable, that are there. And we've got a couple of guys that are not necessarily. We've got more than most of our guys. We've got some West Point guys and some Army guys that work in our organization. And I can think of one that was an engineer. The rest of them were infantry guys, a couple artillery guys, a signal guy. And as a junior officer, you're all doing about the same thing. You're doing very, very similar type of things, and that translates pretty easy to the civilian world. In construction, I think it does some other things. The nice part about construction is there's like a team of people. You're out there in a trailer. It's kind of like you're out there with your buddies, and you're accomplishing this mission. It's to build a building. Just a lot of similar kind of military aspects of things. Very similar. That where other things. If you're going to go and be work with a hedge fund or a private equity fund, no, but I believe you have a competitive advantage if you've got the financial skills to go work for a private equity firm or something like that, because those young people in college, they get no leadership training. If somebody, I mean, as stupid as this sounds, say the person next to you needs a shower, they stink. But they got the 3 screens there. They're working on their computer. They're doing all this different stuff, and they got, in the Army, you'd go, dude, you're getting a shower, and if you don't come in, but now this guy over here, because no one's told him that, they're going to go do a presentation, and somebody's not going to buy a company from them because this dude hadn't had a shower. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah.
And you learn that in the Army. Learn in the military.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is that what you mentioned before? There's of course the soft skills, which is all of the leadership training that's embedded into any service members, and in particular officers. But beyond that, you had mentioned earlier, which is the structure of military translating to built environment is very similar as the example you brought up, right? Project manager, site super, and so on. So totally agreed.
Yeah.
So today, closing out kind of where you're at on a professional civilian profession, what do you focus on today that you want to that excites you and you want to share?
I get excited about the people. Now I've been in the business for 40 years. Is the people that are coming into our business and the people that have followed in our footsteps, and how good they are. And it's a reflection of how much I gave, and my peers gave into the training them how to do things right. If they do something wrong, here's the thing you did wrong, and here's how you can do it right. But giving people good direction and setting an example, I get the most excited about that now. I used to be like, I want to have total control. I want to have my hands on the wheel. And now I feel very comfortable not having my hands on the wheel and saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, these folks are really, really good. And I had a little piece of why they're good. And that's tremendously satisfying.
Yeah, that's awesome. And last question here before we close out with our final two questions. But staying on the civilian profession right now, given your experience, building a company, selling it, starting in a large organization and growing within it, what kind of growth advice can you give to others that are listening in beginning or middle of their civilian careers?
Act and dress like the position you want to be. That's because you don't get one first impression, and you want to act and dress like the position you want to be, and not be afraid of that next position. Is if you want it, train hard for it, know what it needs to accomplish it. But there's going to be stuff that you don't know, but don't be afraid. And the other one is don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't act like ask questions, ask your subordinates, ask the people around you. How do you do this? What are you doing like that? There may be ways in which you can ask them so you don't feel like you're dumb. That's the wrong way to say it, but ask questions. Be always inquisitive about that.
Yeah, well said. So before we get to our final two questions, just want to see if there's anything I didn't ask or that you want to add.
Going back to where you're going to go work, have fun and enjoy every day. That it's very meaningful to enjoy your work and to have fun. Not stupid fun, but just everybody needs a little fun in life, and good sense of humor it goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So closing out, we'll finish with our two last questions. Let's start with wellness practice. What does that look like for you?
I try to work out at least 5 days a week with weights or a stationary bike or walk or run. I had to have my hip replaced about a year ago, so I ran. I ran a lot, and so from the airborne days, in fact, that's what Doc said, because you messed your hip up from jumping out of airplanes. But it's better now. My goal is to run a 10K race by the end of the year, and so I'm starting jogging again. But I always like to work out, and so that's got to be part of my daily routine. So that's on the wellness side. Try to eat okay. Probably have too many beers, but I'll get over that.
Yeah, well,
it has to
sounds like you got
that's hanging around too many army buddies. That's where that all comes from.
Right.
Well, not me. It's not me. It's them. It's them.
Yeah. It sounds like you got a good exercise routine, so that's most important. That's great. So closing out with the last question, any book or books you'd like to recommend to the audience?
I read a book, and it's been 30 years ago, and it's called The Road Ahead, and it's by Bill Gates. And he talks about, I'll never get this piece about it. He said, because I envision, this is when they just had PCs, and what they want to do, said, the internet was just coming on. He said, I envision launching satellites that are about the size of Volkswagen Beetles. And there'd be 144 geosynchronous satellites around the Earth. And that was the way they delivered the internet. And I thought, dadgum, that's pretty good, because it's such a shorter distance. And, think about what's happening now. If you'd only, what Elon Musk has done, it's just like Bill Gates was talking about this stuff 30 some years ago. And what a person. And then another one is the biography of Warren Buffett. And it was 30 years ago too. And he had done all these amazing things. And just his tenaciousness and sticking to the same deal, and buying companies that were really good companies, and letting the people that they're really good companies because the people are running the companies are really good. So don't mess with them. Just give them what they need in order to scale and grow. And going back to the Gates book, it wasn't him but it was in the book. He said Bill Gates would do more for the world, something like that, in the next 30 years than he did in his first 30 years. And there's no question about it. There's not even any question about it. You know, the philanthropic things he's done, what Microsoft did from that point to now is just ridiculous. So it's just that those things really stick in my mind. There's things, books that are out there. Now they're older, but I think you can learn a lot from them.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think anyone could understand that just given, you know, what those two have accomplished. So that's awesome. Mark, really, really appreciate you jumping on, taking the time to share your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about the blowing in the background.
It's okay. Yeah, we solved it. At Mark. I'll chop that out. We got two different views. So I appreciate that. To our listeners, thank you for joining and for listening. And we'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build.